My name is Caron, I am 74 years old, and I am writing this while sitting on my terrace overlooking the Tuileries garden. If you had met me 30 years ago, you would have seen a woman who had the world by the throat. I was the editor-in-chief of one of the most influential style publications in Paris. My life consisted of fashion shows, flawless headlines, and tight deadlines. My husband, Jean-Pierre, was an architect whose buildings changed the face of the city. We seemed to embody French chic, perfect parties, perfect children, a perfect facade. But today, when the silver in my hair is real and not dyed, I want to tear down that facade. What I am about to tell you are the 5 fundamental mistakes that nearly turned my 40-year marriage into a pile of ashes. I am sharing this not because my story is unique, but because it is frighteningly common. We spent years trying to look happy instead of just being happy. The first 2 mistakes were the most destructive for us because they seeped into our relationship drop by drop, imperceptibly, like poison in expensive wine. I want you to hear this now, while you still have the time that Jean-Pierre and I almost lost forever. The first mistake that ate away at us for almost 15 years was keeping invisible accounts. At the editorial office, I was used to everything being balanced: budgets, columns, schedules. Unfortunately, I brought this approach home with me. In my head, there was always an open file called "Who Did More?" I recorded every step I took there. I organized a dinner for his partners. I chose a school for the children. I remembered his mother's birthday when he himself forgot. And every time Jean-Pierre asked me for something small, like picking up his cufflinks, I thought, seriously? After everything I've already done today? I never said it out loud, but it showed in my gaze, in the way I set the cup on the table. Resentment grew between us like a wall of cold marble. And Jean-Pierre, he kept his own list. He worked until midnight so we could afford this apartment. He put up with my moods during Fashion Week. He silently repaired everything that broke in our home. We both felt like underappreciated heroes. Our marriage turned into a constant settling of scores, where no one wanted to be in debt. We forgot that love is not an exchange of services. It's not a market where you give exactly as much as you receive. The turning point came only when I became seriously ill in the late 90s. Jean-Pierre simply closed his drawings and was my hands and feet for 4 months. No reproaches, no list of good deeds. Then I realized, when a real storm hits, your lists of merits go down first. Either you both hold the helm, or you both sink. The second mistake cost me many sleepless nights in our apartment on Rue de Rivoli. I call it the Pygmalion syndrome. In my work, I am used to taking raw material, a model, text, idea, and polishing it until it is flawless. Unfortunately, I decided I could do the same with Jean-Pierre. He was a brilliant architect, but in everyday life he remained that boy from Provence, a little chaotic, sometimes careless, and completely unable to observe the social etiquette that was so important in my circle. For decades, I tried to fix him. I criticized his dress sense. I interrupted him when he told his too long stories at dinner parties. I tried to turn him into the perfect accessory for my life. I thought that if I pointed out his flaws often enough, he would finally understand and change. But it didn't work. My criticism only made him withdraw, retreat into his drawings, and feel inadequate in his own home. We wasted energy trying to change each other instead of appreciating the uniqueness that we had once fallen in love with. It was only years later that I realized that his chaos was the flip side of his genius, and his inability to wear a tuxedo was his honesty. We had to learn to accept each other as finished works of art, not as drafts that needed constant editing. The third mistake almost led to our breakup in the early 2000s. It was the habit of sweeping minor grievances under the rug of our well-being. In Parisian high society, it is not customary to make a scene. We learned to be polite even when we were seething with rage inside. I allowed minor grievances, a forgotten promise, a cold tone, inattention to my requests, to pile up. I convinced myself Caron, you're above this. Just keep quiet, don't ruin the evening. But it was a trap. Silence is not always peace. Sometimes it's just an incubator for anger. As a result, any little thing, say, an aperitif served incorrectly or a forgotten key, became a detonator. I could explode and start yelling about things that happened 5 years ago. Jean-Pierre stood there puzzled, looking at the broken glass, not understanding that it wasn't about the glass, but about months of my unspoken loneliness. We learned to talk about difficult things right away, without waiting for them to turn into a toxic cloud. I realized that it was better to have one honest, albeit awkward, argument today than a disaster 6 months from now. Difficult conversations are not signs of the end of a marriage, they're a tool for its survival. After about 25 years of living together, we imperceptibly fell into the most insidious trap of all. We switched our marriage to autopilot. You know, in Paris there is an expression, metro, boulot, dodo, subway, work, sleep. In our case, it was receptions, shows, drawings. We knew each other so well that it felt like we were reading the same book for the 100th time. We stopped being surprised. We stopped asking questions that didn't concern tomorrow's schedule. Our communication turned into an endless exchange of organizational notes. Caron, have you confirmed our attendance at the gallery opening? Jean-Pierre, don't forget that we're having lunch with the publisher on Thursday. We became like two perfectly tuned mechanisms rotating in the same room, but never touching each other's gears. We stopped going on dates, real dates, not those social outings where we were obliged to keep up appearances. We stopped communicating on a soul level, limiting ourselves to a functional level. The worst thing was that it happened so slowly and elegantly that we didn't even notice how the romance and curiosity we had for each other evaporated, leaving behind only a dry residue of politeness. We lived in the golden cage of our success, but inside that cage we were infinitely lonely. We were neighbors in a luxurious apartment who sometimes shared a bed, but no longer shared dreams. We relaxed, convincing ourselves that since we had lived together for so many years, our marriage was as unshakable as Notre Dame. But buildings without restoration crumble, and relationships without attention turn to ruins even faster. One incident sobered me up. Our close friends, whose marriage in Saint-Germain had been considered a model of stability for 38 years, suddenly announced their divorce. Our entire circle was in shock. I met with Helene for coffee, and she said something to me that still rings in my ears. Caron, everything was normal for us. But normal is not life. It's just a slow fade. I realized that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life just being there for someone who looks right through me. That conversation scared me to the core. I returned home, looked at Jean-Pierre reading the newspaper in his chair, and realized that we were standing on the same precipice. We were simply existing side by side, but we were no longer connected. And if we didn't do something now, tomorrow might be too late. We started small, and at first it felt awkward, almost artificial. We decided to change our rituals. We stopped eating dinner in front of the TV or discussing work calls. We started setting the table with candles, even if it was just a simple omelet, and put our phones away in another room. We started asking each other real questions again, the kind you ask on a first date. What were you thinking about today while you were walking? What really made you happy this week? What are you afraid of now at 60? At first, Jean-Pierre answered in monosyllables, but gradually the ice began to melt. We rediscovered each other, realizing that over the decades we had both become different people whom we had yet to get to know. We resumed our evening walks along the banks of the Seine, just 20 minutes, just the two of us, without security guards or assistants. This became our sacred time. We started going on dates again, not to fancy restaurants where everyone knew us, but to tiny bistros on the outskirts, where we could just sit in a corner, hold hands, and eat ice cream from a single paper cup. We brought mindful attention back into our lives. It turned out that a marriage needs care no less than the rarest of gardens. It cannot thrive when neglected. We began to relearn how to see the beauty in each other's wrinkles, in the little things that used to annoy us. The turning point came when our son Mark was going through a difficult divorce and returned to our home for a few months. Seeing his pain and his broken life, Jean-Pierre and I realized that we were a team. We were not Caron versus Jean-Pierre, arguing over whose career was more important. We are two people looking in the same direction. We began to truly listen to each other without wanting to win the argument. We realized that if one of us won an argument by proving we were right, we were both actually losing because a wall was growing between us. We began to look for solutions instead of ways to hurt each other. We started saying, "Help me understand you," instead of shouting, "You're wrong." This changed the whole atmosphere in our home. From a cold museum, it turned back into a living, warm place where you could be vulnerable and still feel completely safe. The fifth mistake I realized too late was that I forgot that Jean-Pierre and I were on the same team. In those years when my career at the magazine was at its peak, I perceived every disagreement as a trial that I had to win. I was the prosecutor, he was the defendant, and we sacrificed our love so that I could leave the room feeling triumphant. We wasted precious hours of our lives trying to prove who was sacrificing more or who was right in this argument. But in marriage, there are no winners if one partner is crushed. If one of you leaves the room feeling defeated, you have both just taken a step toward the abyss. The real test of our teamwork came when our son Mark returned to our Paris home after his collapse. He was almost 40. He had lost his business and his faith in people. Jean-Pierre and I had polar opposite views on how to help him. I wanted to pressure him and force him to take action, while Jean-Pierre wanted to give him space. In our youth, we would have turned this into a war of ideologies. But this time, we sat down in the office, surrounded by drawings and old issues of Vogue, and for the first time I said, "Jean-Pierre, I don't want to be right. I want our son to be healthy. Help me understand your point of view." And everything changed. We stopped fighting each other and started fighting for our family. We realized that even if we disagreed on methods, we had the same goal. When you remember that you are allies, your arguments cease to be hurtful. You stop looking for ways to hurt each other and start looking for ways to maintain balance. This solidarity in our pain for our son has bound our marriage more tightly than any vows at the altar in 1974. Now, at 74, I look back on our 40 years not as a straight line of success, but as a complex, sometimes torn, but skillfully mended tapestry. We are not perfect. Even today, decades later, Jean-Pierre still leaves his sketches lying around, and I still try to plan our day off down to the minute. But now we catch ourselves doing it. We smile where we would have started shouting before. We choose each other every single day, consciously and carefully. Life in Paris has taught me that the most precious thing is not a bag from the latest collection or an apartment overlooking the Seine. It is a person who knows all your flaws, all your white lies, and still chooses to sit with you on the terrace, covering your knees with a blanket. If I could go back to that church in the suburbs of Paris on our wedding day, I wouldn't wish for wealth or fame. I would whisper in my ear, "Caron, stop keeping score. Embrace its chaos. Tell the truth before it becomes poison. Never stop going on dates with it. And remember, you're on the same team." We've buried many friends. We've seen empires fall and fashions change, but we've changed together. And that's the only success that really matters. We won't be here forever. Our Tuileries garden will bloom without us. But while we are here, we choose a life of intimacy, not just comfortable coexistence. Don't wait for your golden anniversary to start being honest. Start today. The story of Caron and Jean-Pierre is a reminder that even the most flawless facade cannot replace the warmth of human hands. If this story has helped you see your relationship from a different angle or given you the courage to talk about what's been bothering you, please subscribe to our channel. Here we gather the wisdom of those who have come a long way so that you can shorten your path to happiness. Like this video so that it appears in the feed of those who are currently feeling lonely in their own marriage. Your one click could be the beginning of someone's healing. And be sure to write in the comments, which of Caron's 5 mistakes resonated with you the most? What do you consider to be the main enemy of a long marriage? Boredom, resentment, or unwillingness to listen? We read every message, and your stories bring this community to life. Share this video with someone you care about. Sometimes it's the best way to say, I don't want a wall to grow between us. Take care of each other. Choose love over being right. Thank you for joining us on this trip to Paris.